of those cases. That always, I think there's even a documentary that I watched once, a story documentary on what really happened with the Kagezi killings. Usually, Robert is very, very interested in some of these stories and usually follows them up. I wonder if he has also probably has a theory or thinks this could be a very, very big step into us or the country solving this murder case. Good morning, Robert. First things first, welcome back from the weekend. You're looking glowy. I don't know, it's a Monday, but yeah.
Hello, how are you?
I am all right.
Praise the Lord.
Amen, amen.
Hope you had a lovely weekend. Well, I did have a very lovely, fantastic weekend. I had some good time with family, but I'll just begin with the John Kagezi murder. Well, I did cover that story. I remember very well. She was shot at around 7:30. I was still around, and I was among the first journalists to get at the scene. How it was cordoned off, she usually had a common stopover where I should buy fruits from someone. Allegedly, I think maybe they were coming from the same village. So these shooters knew that from work she has to stop there. But one unique thing with the murder of Joan Kagezi, and very sad, is that she had her children in that double cabin. So they witnessed the shooting. It's very horrific, very scary. And police made a few arrests. However, then the DPP came out and said that all the people by then that had been arrested maybe could be charged for other offenses, but not the murder of Joan of Kagezi. So when they say that the lead suspect is in Sweden, we hope and we believe that that suspect will be brought back home and face charges. But I want to remind Ugandans also, do you remember someone called Pato, who was got from, was it South Africa, still on the murder of somebody, brought to Uganda, then whatever happened? You know, I may not be very excited over that until I see that the person has been arrested, and of course, the law has taken its course and they have been convicted. Because it seems these murder cases take so long. Take so long for us to have a final judgment. There is one today who is in court. One time he's saying he won't be able to come, he'll be busy in Luzira because he's going to be leading service. The next time he's asking court for 50 million to advertise for his witnesses. I don't know why murder cases, look at Jamiru Mukuru, how long he spent. You know, I can mention so many, those in the Kawesa trial, some at one time even government had to compensate. You know,
most of these cases never really get closed, and I think the whole idea of solving the whole issue never gets there. But at least 7 years in this particular case, for the first time I feel like we were close to at least, you know, closing that case.
With my time, I can only be a bit excited when they said this is the person, he's been brought, the judicial process has ended, he has been convicted and sentenced. But if you're to go to Luzira and look at how many people are murder suspects, for example, AIGP Kawesi, one time we had over 50 people. You know, it one time became so, it's complicated. But away from that, yesterday was Sunday, and I witnessed something that really broke my heart. Christians at St. Mark Cathedral in Luwero. Yesterday, the acts that were portrayed, there is a bishop, the outgoing actually, bishop of this diocese, renounced the throne, and they usually call it abdication of the throne. And now, yesterday he was kind of handing over office. But remember, there was a canon who was appointed to be the bishop of this diocese, but then later there were issues and he was dropped. Now, Christians in Uwero, can you believe, as service was going on, police had cordoned off the cathedral. Tight security cathedral. Christians are praying, even the outgoing bishop, there was drama. One person is speaking, someone picks the microphone and then says a lot of things, he's stopped, he's held. Outside, Christians are having placards. You know, remove politics in church. We want Kanona, I think it's called Semakula, Kasana Godfrey. We want him as a bishop. Then others came up with letters of intention to sue Church of Uganda. I'm like, Heavenly Lord, when did we get here?
Yeah.
When you go to the born again, there is what is there. When you come to the Anglican Church, that I respect and know how I highly treasure that institute. One time we saw in Arua what was happening. So I'm like, Heavenly Father, what is
There was
happening?
just a lot of drama that was uncalled
Yes.
for. If you ask me, what I witnessed was just a lot of confusion. I don't know why it seems like lately there is a lot of mixing of politics and faith, and that shouldn't be there. But also the discipline, the way it was all handled, bringing in police all over the place, and even the Christians, it was really a lot of drama. But anyway, a lot of things are happening. I don't know, Felix, what did catch your attention over the weekend, coming into Monday. Good morning, Felix.
How are you, Mollen?
I am all right.
How was your weekend?
I was quite awesome.
You had lots of things to do, I'm guessing.
Yeah, quite a number. But I'm not complaining.
It was quite a marathon of events. But anyway, a lot of things did happen. Of course, one of them is your first story about these all investigations and unconcluded murder cases and proceedings. You realize that in its own self has been an identity of how judiciary deals with mostly criminal offenses. Now, criminal law in its own self is very, very, should I say, it's quite not something easy. That's why most jurisdictions, if you rush it, you end up convicting the wrong people. Just like what we have seen in many, many cases. Yeah, they have many people arrested, like I think in the Kawesa issue, they had over 50 people. And they were not able to prove even one of them. But most of them had already been on remand and what. So, you see, something else also that you said, Robert's story, another story about the Anglican Church. You must believe a sad reality that we are facing as a country. We are on a junction of modernization, and those are some of the evidences. You will see these all fake debacle of DNA. Those are just all symptoms of us being at a juncture of modernization. Yeah. It is the struggle of being primitive, yet you have a glimpse on modernization. But we actually, if you have an interrogation of individuals who do most of these things, you'll see that they are struggling with primitivity, but yet they have a glimpse on what modernization should be. Yeah. So it's all the modern civilities have been there. It's not news. It doesn't make even, it's only news for those who don't bother to read and understand what countries go through to get to modernity. All these become issues. The gay thing that you saw a couple of, it's all the fact that we are at the roundabout of modernization. So
are we the ones failing to adjust? Because some of these changes are going to come.
You think it's easy? You think it's easy? Mollen, for example, you wake up one day, tomorrow, and you have $4 trillion on your account. Do you know what that would mean to your life?
That's a game changer.
That's the thing. And that's what you're struggling with. For example, initially, what we knew is that church leaders are not questioned.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's what we grew. But now modernity is saying something different. That you can't stand in the face of what you see to be unfair. So there's a contrast between what you see to be unfair and the modest that comes with Christianity. Yeah. Now, that's the clash I'm talking about. In modern worlds, people petition priests. Priests are arrested like normal people. Modernity is something, as I've told you, you wake up one day and in your account you have $1 trillion. How do you of course everything is you're going to struggle with, everyone will struggle with understanding you, but they're forgetting that you're shifting from a millionaire to a trillionaire. Like how, that's the struggle. Now, that's where Uganda is. Oh, and this is just the beginning. In Ontario, you're going to see worse than this. Until you need to excuse people. In fact, I was talking to a couple of guys on there's a forum I was attending. And I was telling them about this DNA thing. Like, you need to appreciate one thing. you're trying to be something you know you are not. Africans that, again, it's character of limp, in law we call it a limp frog. You want to jump into modernity, but you're attempting to do something you're not ready for.
No,
because you want to do DNA, okay, but DNA is not done when the child is 13. For you being ochamuka, I don't know how to do, you're excited. But if society wants to appreciate DNA, the initiators of this probably was at birth, probably Kati, again, struggling with someone is doing DNA for a child who's 34. Are you a fool?
Well, I think we just take on some of these trends, so, or even looking at when technology comes and you think it's at your disposal, it's only in human nature that people would want to explore that, but we know that there are consequences. Well, a lot of things obviously happening across the country, but it's not all sad and bad news.
Now I want to move away from modernity, and I want to begin by congratulating all local council chairpersons, the executive they have worked with. Job well done. Today marks the end of their term. So all chairpersons LC1 all over Uganda, today is the 10th of July. You were elected. That is in 2018. Thank you for the good work. Job well done. Today marks the end. However, you're still in office. The Minister of Local Government, Raphael Magezi, is going to come up with guidelines because government of Uganda does not have money to organize elections for chairpersons LC1. Remember, in 2018 we had the first election since we went into multi-party dispensation. These guys had been around for I think 17 years without LC elections. Now, this time again, you're having another extension. I'm proudly also to some an executive member. So no elections for now. The about 59 billion was what required for LC one and women council. The Prime Minister told Parliament the money is not available. It is not there. It wasn't budgeted for. What the Electoral Commission had requested is not been getting. I hope we do not go back to the past where again these people are going to have another almost 5 years in office without being elected. But thanks for the 5 years of job well done.
I did see the local government leaders actually urging that government should provide funding to see that this election takes place. We hope that is in the near future because really extension of terms for those guys, probably not a good idea. We need to revive. But well, we also know on a positive note that the Sudanese government has at least released some of the trucks that were stuck on the border and allowed them to come back home. So that is a little bit of good news. We know that the drivers there were actually stuck and a lot of people's goods were getting, especially the maize flour. It was just in that. So at least there is good news. It's back in the country and maybe it gives us an opportunity to revive the way we are taking our produce outside of Uganda. But still many stories going on. Robert and Felix will be taking us through the local stories and later we'll be also going through the international stories. Robert.
Well, we'll begin with burial arrangements of city tycoon, commonly known as Ponyi, where the body of city tycoon Apollo Nyenga Mehe, popularly known as Ponye, yesterday arrived at his home in Lubowa, much in the Sabagabo division, where family, friends, relatives paid their last tributes to him, as well as hosting it for a night vigil. Ponye lost his life on Thursday night in a fatal accident along Ntungamo Mbara Highway.
Now still in local stories, South Sudan ambassador to Uganda has blamed recent denial of access of Uganda's export to South Sudan on saboteurs seeking to ruin the relationships of the two countries that they enjoy. Ambassador Joach Deng also notes that South Sudan has signed a power sale agreement with Uganda to have Uganda's surplus power exported to Sudan. Now, this was during celebrations to observe South Sudan independence at the event officiated by Minister of Relief, Disaster Preparedness and Refugees, Engineer Hilary Onek.
Moving on, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has earmarked over 1 billion shillings for the establishment of a presidential model farm in Bukedia district, eastern Uganda. A senior private secretary to the President on Women Affairs, Judith Awichu, said the farm is expected to skill women and youth on the 7 pillars of the parish development model.
Now, the bishops of Northwest Ankole Diocese, Amos Magezi, has urged Christians to prioritize the well-being of children and avoid any actions that could cause them harm. Speaking during a Thanksgiving ceremony in Kabale district in honor of that is a Graceville sanctuary for vulnerable girls, Bishop Magezi emphasized the importance of treating children with respect, love, compassion, as they are precious gifts from God.
Now, in international news, we're looking at Joe Biden in UK to meet Sunak and King Charles amid Ukraine concerns. US President Joe Biden has landed in the UK ahead of NATO summit in Lithuania later this week, which comes after several allies questioned his call to send cluster bombs to Ukraine. The UK and Canada are among those who voiced concern about supplying the bombs, which are widely banned because of the danger they pose to civilians. The US says they are needed because Ukraine's weapon stock are dwindling. Now, on Monday, Mr. Biden will meet UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and the two are expected to discuss various issues, including the war in Ukraine. Mr. Sunak has not directly criticized his US counterpart following Friday's cluster bomb announcement, but on Saturday he said the UK was one of the 123 countries signed up to the Convention on Cluster Ammunitions and an international treaty which bans the production and use of the weapons. In another story, Spanish rescuers are searching waters off the Canary Islands for the boat carrying at least 200 African migrants who went missing more than a week ago. The aid group Working Borders says the fishing boat sailed from the Kafountine, a coastal town in southern Senegal that is roughly 1,700 kilometers from Tenerife. Now, the group says many children are on board, and Spain's EFE news agency reports 2 similar boats carrying dozens more people are also said to be missing. The boat carrying about 200 people left Kafountine on 27th June, heading for Canary Islands. Spain's Maritime Rescue Service told the EFE that the plane had joined the search. And in Tunisia, Tunisia's president has rejected criticism of his government's treatment of black African refugees after hundreds were rounded up by authorities and left on the border with Libya. President Kais said on Sunday that refugees were receiving humane treatment stemming from what he called our values. Refugees, however, say they have been left to tackle the desert heat with little food and water. Tunisia, which is a major migration route to Europe, has come under criticism from rights groups after authorities rounded up refugees and asylum seekers and expelled them to a remote buffer zone at Tunisia's border with Libya. Now, in climate news, experts are speculating that climate change and other factors are driving the increase in kidney stone cases among children and teens. Experts told NBC News that just 3 decades ago, kidney stones were largely a disease that affected middle-aged white men, but they have now increasingly affected children and teens, especially in the summer. The number of annual kidney stone cases increased by 16% from 1997 to 2012, according to Clinical Journal of the American Society on Nephrology, with 15 to 19-year-olds seeing the greatest increase in cases Kidney stones incidences were 52% higher among females within the age bracket, while males became more susceptible to the disease at the age of 25. Well, quite a lot of stories are going on, and we also have some that are making headlines in our dailies for today. We'll be looking at some of those. Felix, what do we have in the Daily Monitor?
Well, of course, in the Daily Monitor now, the big headline, fight erupts over industrial parks. Okay. And Miracle Babies, Mbabazi's journey to motherhood. Now Kazimba takes charge of divided Luweero Diocese, and church celebrates faith of the little ones.
Well, we'll also be looking at much more of those dailies later on, but we also want to take you through an inspiration song of the day to get you into Monday. When we get back, we do have a topical discussion that we also want you to be a part of, and where we'll be discussing matters of importance. For now, we take a short break.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
I'd like to quickly teach you a new song. It says, "You're a wonder to my soul, Jesus. You're a wonder to my soul, Jesus. You're a wonder-working wonder, hey, Jesus. You're a wonder to my soul."
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, it is Good Morning Uganda. Thank you so much for waking up with us. And of course, we are also here to make sure that on this 10th day of July, we're able to a little bit bring in here and there when it comes to updates politically, economically, and socially, everything concerning the country and beyond. We're here to get you into that, but also I am hoping that you've had a good weekend. And if not, at least Monday is here. Again, we do hope that the week goes well for you. But again, we also get to look at how far we can inspire you and make sure that we bring in a little bit of warmth this morning. My name is Mollen, Kenyena, and I do have two gentlemen with me here, Kirabo, Nyonyintono, as well as Felix Nkunda, who will be all joining our efforts together just for the delight of your morning. But also talking about the weekend, a lot of things have been going around across the country and of course, like I talked about earlier, beyond. But if you remember the infamous sad story on the Kagezi killing, it looks like that is something that has never been solved. And a lot of people exaggerating on what happened with the suspects in the Kagezi killing. Well, government did come up, that is in the course of last week, to say that the major suspect in that murder is said to be in Sweden, and they are planning on the extradition of this person to get back into the country. Now, could that be a fast step into solving what seemed to be a puzzle or a crime that was never really solved, and has got a lot of Ugandans thinking, what happens for some of those cases? That always, I think there's even a documentary that I watched once, a story documentary on what really happened with the Kagezi killings. Usually, Robert is very interested in some of these stories and usually follows them up. I wonder if he has also probably has a theory or thinks this could be a very big step into us or the country solving this murder case. Good morning, Robert. First things first, welcome back from the weekend. You're looking glowy. I don't know, it's a Monday, but yeah.
Hello, how are you?
I am all right.
Praise the Lord.
Amen, amen.
Hope you had a lovely weekend. Well, I did have a very lovely, fantastic weekend. I had some good time with family, but I'll just begin with the John Kagezi murder. Well, I did cover that story. I remember very well. She was shot at around 7:30. I was still around, and I was among the first journalists to get at the scene. How it was cordoned off, she usually had a common stopover where she would buy fruits from someone. Allegedly, I think maybe they were coming from the same village. So these shooters knew that from work she has to stop there. But one unique thing with the murder of Joan Kagezi, and very sad, is that she had her children in that double cabin. So they witnessed the shooting. It's very horrific, very scary. And police made a few arrests. However, then the DPP came out and said that all the people by then that have been arrested maybe could be charged for other offenses, but not the murder of Joan of Kagezi. So when they say that the lead suspect is in Sweden, we hope and we believe that that suspect will be brought back home and face charges. But I want to remind Ugandans also, do you remember someone called Pato, who was got from, was it South Africa, still on the murder of somebody, brought to Uganda, then whatever happened? You know, I may not be very excited over that until I see that the person has been arrested, and of course, the law has taken its course and they have been convicted. Because it seems these murder cases take so long. Takes so long for us to have a final judgment. There is one today who is in court. One time he's saying he won't be able to come, he'll be busy in Luzira because he's going to be leading service. The next time he's asking court for 50 million to advertise for his witnesses. I don't know why murder cases, look at Jamiru Mukuru, how long he spent. You know, I can mention so many, those in the Kawesa trial, some at one time even government had to compensate. You know,
most of these cases never really get closed,
So-
and I think that
I've seen a number of community members out there that have formed themselves into groups and have identified enterprises, agricultural enterprises, rice and all that, and they've actually been successfully cultivating them. They've gone ahead, the project has gone ahead and also introduced small-scale industries like the rice huller, the grinding mills and all that that are managed by the groups. All these are successes.
This is the University of Africa. On the streets, you get your real education. Here, everybody has a degree of something. But the most important qualification is imagination. His reason is to be the GOAT. The reason to imagine is to take the beat and make it lit. So no matter what your situation, just use your imagination.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, good morning, Uganda. Thank you so much for being here with us. And of course, if you're just joining us, we are looking at the newsreel this morning, bringing in a discussion when it comes to local government. And as we talk about a term ending for the chairman for LC1 and LC2. Now, last week we did see government coming up to say that there are no funds to organize for elections for the incoming leadership. Now, we also know that at the same time, the leaders at local government have also expressed their disappointment in government not being able to allocate funds to carry out such a huge activity that they believe is crucial and should be given priority. But this morning, we also want to dive into that discussion and understand when it comes to the leadership at LC1 level and LC2 level. We know that this is quite crucial. I know a lot of avenues in this country that where you go, you actually, one of the requirements that you need is probably a letter from the LC, and usually that is on many occasions. And we're always running to these offices for such staff. So you know, they have a huge responsibility when it comes to even supporting some of the government programs. We know for sure that one of the biggest programs right now, especially the parish development model, has also been, you know, organized and channeled through the LC2s. So we do hope that, or the idea is to have implementation strategies also through these local council offices. So meaning that this is something that should be paid attention to. But at the same time, we also know that it's an area that is usually ignored. People think that these are just office figures, but also probably might not need to be taken, you know, as a priority. And then you also have another issue about their facilitation in terms of how much government actually facilitates them to run these offices. And some people would argue that maybe it's actually okay for them to stay in office because after all, they are comfortable with the kind of facilitation. Or if they are not, then they have not voiced it out. And this is where I want to bring in Robert as well this morning. When we were talking about leadership at local council, especially now specifically looking at LC1 and LC2, we know that there is a lot that goes into their roles and responsibilities. But we're talking about their term ending right now. And I think the biggest question would be their roles, what they do at that level, and why government should be prioritizing the administration at that level.
Thank you, Mollen. To begin with, if there is any office where administration begins, political administration, is at LC1. You know, we went into decentralization, and LC1s are the first unit away from someone's family, then you go to community, and that is why they looked for the first institution of government in terms of execution, in terms of monitoring and supervision. It is the first grassroots office that government has. That's why even the stamp of an LC is not by choice that you go to NASA and design your stamp. No. It is government of Uganda. A stamp was given. That is why even any document you present in court, you present, even if you're to get a passport, that is the powerfulness, to mention but a few, of this office. Now, very sad and unfortunate that it has been the most neglected. Most neglected. No wonder sometimes we see the uncertainties that come with this neglect. For example, you have a village of about 300 people. That is what it ought to be for you to have carved out. But now a village can have so many people, definitely. Now you will even get confused. If in Kampala, one house could have maybe 20 Sudanese living, another than 30 Congolese, the other than 15 and all that. But all these people, their first area of connection must be the LC. This is why if someone is coming into the area, they must introduce themselves to the first office of government, which is the LC. If very functional, this person must know where you're coming from, what you do, why you've come to stay in that area, have all your contacts and documents that are necessary in terms of any uncertainty. Who are your next of kin? You know, where exactly do you stay? Look at some of these simple disputes. They're supposed to be settled at the LC. Now, when we go to documentation, those documents, even when you're getting a bank loan, you know, that in case of tracking or tracing, they come to the LC office, who is supposed to know where to find you, you know. So much problems we are having today are because of neglecting this office. All of them find out, be terrorism, the worst, which is terrorism. They will tell you that they just came, they never introduced themselves. Go to, because this is a fully fledged cabinet. You have the chairperson. Why? Because it can be a female or male. You have the vice chairperson. You have one for environment. There is one for youth, elderly. You'll find there is a publicity secretary. Almost, it is a full cabinet, and it can do wonders if it is prioritized. Now, in 2018, we held the first LC1 elections by lining up. And this was the first since we went into multi-party dispensation. I remember when we went into multi-party dispensation, a gentleman by the name of retired Major Rubaramira Ranga went to court and said we cannot hold LC elections the way we had held them because now we have gone a multi-party dispensation. So by then we were going to have elections, but they were halted. And we said we shall organize others. It took us 17 years or more to have LC elections. Now those that were there before we went into multi-party dispensation were still working. So we have LCs that had served maybe for 20 years as chairman of the village. And lucky enough, if they had served well, now they had an extension of these 5 years. The 5 years term comes to expire. Electoral Commission says no, we need 60 billion to organize, 60.8 to organize, that is LC1 and LC2 elections. Government says we could provide 59 billion to have LC1 elections, and also Women Council for Local Government says, I'll provide guidance on how the current people in these offices can continue their term. We can have an extension until money will be found. But remember the criticalness of this office. And sometimes people blame those in this office, but actually they just don't understand what these people go through to at least perform the minimum. I've seen government program, people go on air and say, we are mobilizing LC1 chairperson, go and do this, go and do that. Nothing. The people that are coming to do that are coming with facilitation. The poor LC people have to move with the megaphones, you know. Do this now, COVID time. Remember, even government giving food assistance had to go through LC1. Much as they had the army and the prison and whatever, it was still LC1, a very critical office. Nothing given to it, apart from the, I think it is 120,000 that the chairpersons are supposed to get a year. Now,
that's a figure for the annual pay?
Yes. Mitwaro kumi nebiri. The lucky that can get that a whole year. But these people need stationery. They need an office. I'm an executive, but you have to rent an office. Now you executives, you say how much is the rent? Maybe 200. So that to sustain this office. Now, how you sustain the office? You need furniture, you need this, you need all this. To have a decent office, that someone who is coming in this office, sometimes it is a family, they have had wrangles, and you settle them, and life continues. Sometimes someone's just trespassing. Because remember, these LCs know these landmarks, and people are about to kill themselves. But they come there and they are told, no, I remember very well, I did this agreement, it was from here to there, the executive was there, says, so you're the one in wrong. You've saved court time and all that. Yeah. So the problem is they do a lot of work, but for some reason that I don't know, it has been very, very neglected and left on its own to operate the way they want, apart from government giving them a stamp. I think that is there. Presiding over the swearing in, sometimes, because I remember you come, you take oath, it was a somehow ceremony there, but there is little, nothing, if I may say, that is given to this office apart from responsibilities.
Well, and you do bring in a lot of points there if you look at the roles and what these LC officers should be working on. But again, bringing in the issue of facilitation, that is too little. And it's no wonder that these are some of the gaps that actually pave way for corruption, because there are services that people should be getting freely. But you get to some of these offices and they are telling you, you know what, for me to do this for you, you must pay a particular amount. And this money is never really a uniform figure. You could go, depending on what you want from the office, they can even tell you, no, for me to give you this stamp, I need 100,000. So you don't blame them because there has been a gap. They're not facilitated enough. And you look at also on government side, and I'll bring in Felix here, because first of all, we have already established that this facilitation is probably not enough to sustain offices. Not to mention they also have bills, the utility bills to run the offices. But now they are saying,
Many of them
government is saying,
chairpersons, it's their sitting room that is the office.
Exactly.
And people come at late hours. A person comes from 8 to 9, then you open the sitting room of the chairperson or his home, then you sit there. Sometimes they go up to, they discuss issues up to midnight. Sometimes, very complicated.
Yeah, it gets complicated at that level. But we're also wondering, because if government is saying there is no money to even carry out the re-election process, then it also speaks to how much they have been involved. And is there maybe gaps that government is not addressing when it comes to prioritizing some of these local council administration, and in terms of making sure that they're actually functional and providing, services to Ugandans?
Well, there could be a couple of them, but also keeping into mind that the known identity that carries in a political position is a same attached value to it by the ordaining institution. And in this case, if you want to look at local governments, both 1 and 2 at parish and I think at local council, you find that the problem is much bigger than just what we are alluding to. If you look at it in a way that facilitation is not actually the only problem. For example, when you talk about remunerating LCs to a tune of about 10,000 a month, vis-a-vis the workload, it is simply foolhardy and foolery. Secondly, what was the purpose of local? I think it's important also for us, because that would give us a yardstick of the discussion relating to today being the end of their term. What next? What was the purpose? Local councils, the mandate they carry is far actually bigger than most of all public offices. People may not necessarily view that because of how close they are, but the mandate they carry is bigger than most of people who hold public offices or servant offices for that purpose in terms of government administration, even in terms of local government. For example, when you talk about mobilization in all aspects, and this will cut across in terms of financial, social, political, mention it, just to mention but a few, it will have to start from a point, and that would be the local councils. Now, why Robert kept on saying government needs them for this guy, because they are the only people who can honestly and truly identify themselves with the smallest units of a nation. And that's how one thing leads to the other. You can't talk about, for example, a district, I was talking about a parish, a sub-parish, you can't. Now, leadership, when we went into decentralization, we tried to find a way of bringing services closer to people. But we stopped at a point. Local governments legally and morally, legally, financially want to stop at district level or municipality level. They will pretend that there is the LC, but the truth is that they actually their enforcement and legal bindingness stops at that level. That's why you see the facilitation of councillors is different. These LC5s, because for them they are directly benefiting from the local government setup. Now it leaves these LCs in their own place. That's why you see they are struggling with almost everything. Councillors are not struggling. They have good remuneration, they can assess loans, they are moving out of what, they have all this. So local government structures, by pretense, they will show you that but they don't. Now, there are two questions to ask ourselves. Whether or not this was technical, political, or financially intrigued. It's important for us to ask, was it because of the numbers that come with this LC? That, for example, when you want to find out how many people are LCs on the committee or what, or executive, how many they are, you'll be surprised. Because how many villages are there? How many parishes? That would be one. That would be the financial aspect. The second one was, for example, and this one directly links into what you've seen previously. When you see the mode of election, how are they elected in power? In the 21st century, how do you make people carry out an election of lining up in the back? What kind of democracy is that? One of the normatives of democracy is that it must be secretive, because it appreciates the true right of rights. Why do you want to put me in arm's way not to stand behind?
In this case, they said it was the most transparent
why don't we use it? Why don't we, if
believe these were just
village
elections who are still you knew each other and could already know whom someone would.
Okay, let me ask you, where do you vote for presidency? Let's start with MP. Where do you vote from? Can you go and vote in Acholi?
Definitely you can't.
So where do you vote from if it's about locality?
Still within.
So what's the difference?
Or where you born.
That's just a foolish way of seeing things. The truth is that this group of people is not recognized by government to what it should be. It could be recognized that it's there, but the recognition they ought to have is not what they're being given. How much does a by-election cost of one member of parliament? So far, we have already had about 4 by-elections. How much was the cost? If you ask my brother in Kenya if he came here. You can find that holding by-elections of 10 members of parliament can cost more than 60 billion.
So it takes us,
but
takes us back to the issue of priority.
It is budgeted for.
From government.
Here they said it wasn't budgeted for,
but how do you budget for uncertainty? You, Robert,
the Electoral
Commission those things.
No, but Electoral Commission has a budget for by-elections. They just estimate.
Of how many people?
They estimate.
They have a plan of who will die?
They don't have a plan, but within the plan.
So how do you plan for an uncertainty?
Now here government is saying
and you fail to
money
plan
wasn't
for
budgeted for.
That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's the issue, Felix.
It is plan for uncertainty.
It is.
And forget to plan for the
known. I'm trying to hold my tongue, not to roll with heavy, because that is the most in any person who's warmed.
Still, they'll tell you that the constitution is clear. When a member of parliament dies,
no one has
a stipulated time frame
to have. The constitution, the law is also clear about terms of office. Why are we well with an illegality? One illegality and not the other. This honorable who you want to repress quickly. The relationship with the national, you people, and this is where. And the problem, even I think, goes with us, the litigants and all these other civil society. We're not doing enough. We must go to court for some of these things, because this is jokery. This is a joke. Why do you think, let me ask you, when you go to get bail, for some of you who have been there, why do you think they don't send you for a letter from your member of parliament?
He doesn't know you very well.
Why do you think they don't send you a member from your LC5 chairperson? Or councillor? There's a reason why court wants LC1
Because he
When
knows.
you go to open up a bank account, when you're getting a job, why do you think they never ask you for member of parliament? The ones you're rushing to replace. LC5, councillors are not. Why?
Because
Now,
it is
that in
believed,
its own self.
there is also an issue of how services are provided. It is believed that as a member of parliament, they are doing much to represent their constituency at government level in parliament. So that is more
A constituency is
important.
formed up of who?
Villages. It is villages that form constituencies.
Guys, let me tell you something. I've always told you here, this is a fashion of politics called clandestine, where actually, if you want to bring it, it's called Malaya politics. That you can only buy when you need. There's no person who goes to get these our sisters, the prostitutes, without a need. You only, and that's why they go there at night. This kind of politics where butter is only put on the bread that is going to be eaten. But how about this one you're living in the Kavera? It will be eaten at some point. The reason why you see this, how even planning for an uncertainty and allocation is there, because it is because these people are easily used than the others for political benefit. It is simple though. That they call the bourgeois, the bourgeoises. Don't touch the bourgeoises, the political bourgeoises. Don't touch them. Because we need them to make all sorts of good, bad, ugly, what? Because they're the ones
who pull the notes.
Like, they're the ones. For example, if you want to change a law that aids your being in power, if you're Robert, does LC1 matter?
Doesn't.
So that's why my care goes to who matters. That's what I'm talking about. Now, yet, and this is what I've said on this show time and again, the narrative of having political administration superseding social welfare administration is what characterizes what I told you at the beginning of the show. That when countries are struggling at the roundabout of modernization, for them they think that once you have a grip on power, that's more relevant than having people be well. Because between you and me, who's most important? A chairman, LC1, and a member of parliament.
I don't know how often people run to their members of
It's what I've told you. Why do you think
but
they never ask you?
many times they will go to their chairperson.
Now, there's a reason why. And I'm not saying parliament is not important. It's very important. But its place, it has its place. And LC1s have their place. Now their term is done. We don't know their fate.
So it is automatic extension.
No, in law there's nothing called automatic.
The minister for local government is
The
going
minister,
to come out with
unless-
guidelines.
Robert,
just a
unless
moment.
he makes an ordinance, unless he legalizes and notifies that process. Because now, how about the people who are going to go to court tomorrow who need those letters? To be sure. It's not obvious. I don't know why you want to make it look obvious.
Because we have a precedent.
Which was challenged? You're the one who gave the ruling. Didn't you give a precedent
after
here?
Rubaramira Ruranga went to court
What
and
was the
said-
ruling in that case?
and said we've gone into multi-party dispensation, we can't have them under
What
single
did
party.
court
That
say?
was 17 years ago.
17
That
years
was,
ago. No, after the ruling it didn't. You see, Rubaramira Ruranga.
Just a question.
after Rubaramira
What was in the
Ruranga-
ruling? You leave Rubanga, whatever. What was the ruling?
Of course, the courts sided with him and said we need to organize elections under multi-party
Which
dispensation
meant that those leaders who are not in power legally were.
No. Let me tell you what was funny. Despite that, after the court ruling, we took another 10 years with them continuing in service
the taking
and
of 10
writing
years
letters and
does
these
not
documentations.
remove the fact that it was
But
a
court
nullity.
used to allow them.
Robert, the problem is that we are not listening to each other. The case was there, court
Yes.
gave a ruling. Now, abuse of a ruling of court didn't make what was there right.
Very
That's
true.
what I'm trying to
I
tell
concur
you.
with you. And
Okay?
for what I was saying that there was a precedent, maybe this precedent will continue.
The precedent is not the act. A precedent is what court passed. The act was nullifying what actually court passed. But now, that was again a political practice which overhauled a judicial ruling.
Very true.
That's what I'm saying.
So aren't we
Now-
likely to have the same continue?
Because of us being a quagmire governed kind of way of doing things, of course it will happen.
Yes.
But that doesn't make it right. Robert, In Uganda we say ebbula lyaki. Anyway,
we do want to bring in our viewers here as well and give your comments and of course your engagement in the discussion. We are asking about government involvement when it comes to administration at a local council level, and we're also looking at specifically LC1 and LC2. We know that these are very important offices that government has oftentimes used to implement its programs, and this is one way to reach out to the grassroots people. However, priorities have not been there in terms of facilitation, but also to the extent that we are reaching a level right now where their term is ending today and government still says there is no funding to make sure that we can carry out a re-election process to have a new administration or even see how to move forward at that level. We want you to be giving us your comments on this, what you think should be done, how to address some of these challenges and gaps at that level. You can reach us through our social media platforms. The hashtag is #UBCGMU. But also you can still reach us via our number on WhatsApp and still give us much more of your comments on that. But also where you think we should be looking at as a country to ensure that we are giving services to everyone, but also looking at how we benefit as a country from the roles that local council government does provide. Our WhatsApp number is 0709602592. Now, we also want to look at, of course, as we move forward, we're looking at a possibility of extending their terms in office. But still, we know that it might be almost a similar scenario. While Felix did bring in very good points on us, going back and forth on how this was introduced, but we know that we have to move forward. Now, as possibility of extension is there, what again are we tasking the administration from the local council government? Should they be the ones rooting for the re-election? Should they be the ones rooting for their facilitation, or are the Ugandans just concerned but these people are comfortable in their offices?
Well, I would say it's a 50-50. First and foremost, because of the gaps government has created, it has left room for exploitation. So some are seemingly comfortable because of the gaps that government has put there. For example, these are people who are mandated to witness if someone wanted to, because you can also buy land from lawyers and all that, but to witness and look at these transactions. And when you go to court and they're asking if you did due diligence before buying this plot of land, one of the offices they'll require is, did you consult your LC1? So government leaves these people with such a vital task, but with little input. What do? They get all kind of 10%, 5, what out of this. That is something they look at because there are gaps. These are people who are going to talk about non-government organizations if they come in these areas and they want to extend some programs, some projects. It's the best mobilization tool they have. And they will go through this office. Then they will tell them, we have to use a megaphone, we have to do this. Then the NGO also has a target and a project and a budget. Then they will tip something. These are people who will go to get these letters, I want to get a loan, I want to do this. So, gaps created enable them have some bit of extortion or some bit of revenue here and there. So it would be very hard for one in office to demand that our term has expired. Who would want to say my term has expired? Therefore, elect. Unless there are those that feel like they have served, maybe they have gotten so busy, but still the chairman would still say, I have a vice to take charge of it. So these gaps create avenues for some to find ways of running these offices. That if they are renting, maybe in town, cheapest room 1 or 2, that may go for maybe 250. So the executive has known how they inject in and maybe how they make this money back and move on. Because they have tried. They have tried and said, this is an office, it needs facilitation, but nothing has been happening. So I think they became complacent They said, well, this is what it is. How do we survive as elected leaders? Because the community, the village, wants services. The village, everything that you get, what chairman? Go to the chairman. So the chairman, the executive, you must be there to serve. We cannot say that they're not going to have an extension. Because when the Minister for Local Government, Honorable Raphael Magezi, was before Parliament, he said, since there is no money, we are going to offer guidance on how the current are going to continue. Now, my land friend calls that an illegality, which is true. Because when a term expires, we are supposed to have an election. But because we've ever been in this position before, and they never came up to challenge, but I like the fact that he said sometimes it also goes back to them. That we've ever had for over 10 years after Major Ruanga and court declaring that what we had were not required in a multi-party dispensation, court continued receiving these letters. It knew this was an illegality. It continued receiving these letters. Today we are speaking, even if they are to extend and we have another 5 years without electing new LC 1s and 2s because of lack of money, I want to tell you, court will still get these letters. So they will justify the illegality. They will not oppose it. And because we had a precedent, it will happen again. It is like business as usual. There is no money, so let them automatically continue serving Ugandans. And they will come out and say whatever document, immigration will not deny these documents for you to get a passport, court will not, banks will not, and it will be, we will have normalized the abnormal, made it normal. And therefore, life will continue. But what is the impact of this? That is the biggest challenge I see here. That one, if at all people had a bad leadership or a bad leader, and they were waiting and saying, we will not elect this person back to office. They're continuing with the same, because we've had people who have misused extremely these offices. The chairman has connived with the land dealers and he has sold almost half of the village. And the people's hope has only been that term is expiring on the 10th of July. We shall not re-elect that person because this is an election, we have power. We line in the back. It is easy to mobilize. We shall ensure we don't have this chairman. You don't have this chairperson. Now the chairperson, again, we don't know if the next financial year there will be money or if it will also not be a priority to have these millions we need. Two,
Well,
you see, sometime when people doubt their stay, a man knew he had a term of 5 years, it has expired, he thought maybe I've done all I've done. Morale. People will tell you term ya mweyagwaho, temuli wo mateka. Despite the fact that they will have these documents and they need them. But you as a leader, this is a bit demoralizing. Because you don't know if in the next financial year money will be found, so you go for 1 year. You don't know, maybe pressure may arise and government says we've been able to find this money or supplementary or something like that. So you're in uncertainty in leadership, and uncertainty creates a lot of demoralization. Just believe if you come to work today, you don't know if tomorrow you're going to be here or the next. You know, you're like that. Morally, your zeal, your interest in work ceases to be. So for the voters, they have a problem because they've had bad leadership, but also the people remaining in these offices, whose tenure now they don't know. What does this mean to their service delivery to serve the people?
Well, it does also put things into perspective when you look at well, actually what you called business as usual, because we are
normalizing the abnormal.
Yeah, it's something that is not really right. We seem to be comfortable with it, and this is what Felix was bringing in earlier, talking about the fact that we are, you know, still stuck in that kind of a working procedure. what he calls illegal. But Felix, as we move to conclude, we see that this continuation of the term could actually be impactful, and both negatively and both negatively and positively, because Kirabo did bring out a point of morale. These people are going to be in office. They're like, after all, legally my term ended, so whatever they do could
and
actually
we don't know how long they are going to
be. Concern there would be on how government is also looking at that impact and looking forward, the priorities of government here. How do we move forward?
It's very unfortunate. We are discussing government, yet we are also a government entity. So that in its own self limits how much we can say. I'll first of all tell you, that's why you may say some of these things. But it's sad. It's a very heinous way of and quite alien to approach matters of national importance in a barbaric front like this. It causes doubt it causes us to cast doubt in whether or not it is Uganda versus a Ugandan. Because when you look at some of the allocations of government that directly impact individuals versus what impacts a nation, and this is a normative we are probably getting well with, these alien approaches to national good, to the cake. You find that the government will allocate money to an individual to go and look for markets for Ugandans in the whatever. Lots and lots of money, but we just need 60-something billion. Someone takes over 300, an individual, to go and do seemingly, but so it says a lot about the kind of leaders we have and their priorities. Secondly, to the LCs out there, we need to understand one thing, that when a country is struggling with modernity, the other thing I said earlier, many people get lost in that mix. Identity is key. For you to have realization of being, identity is key. Identity. Now, society's identity is not individuals, is leaders. That's how society is identified, by the people they send to become their emblems. So that's very important. And this is not seen in how they dress. It's seen in how they execute their mandates. That's why when you go to parliament, they talk about, the Honorable Uganda, people of Chira are lucky. Hayogerako. Now, whether Byayogera birungi, that is another discussion, but they see him. There are some MPs who have told you, and I can speak without fear of contradiction, Rubaga South, this one's Obi. What is that man's name? Is it Mokasa? Whatever. Even yourself, your friend, have you ever seen him? Even yawning in parliament?
We
even
actually
coughing?
do have one of the viewers that came in the inbox asking that, please ask if my honorable is around somewhere. We don't see him in parliament.
That's the thing, because we were worried. The first time I saw that man, when he went to pay tribute to the late Kato Lubwama, the first time from the time he was voted, the first time. So we want, is he anywhere on record on Hansard? Now, representation is very important for societies because that's their identity.
But if you people once voted someone who said Mompeng and India, you know, sometimes also,
you see, no.
People get leaders. They deserve you. You have prominent, capable people. Then you choose.
So what do you mean? Because there are lots of divorces, people don't get married.
Sometimes also your electorate.
Anyway, let me say this. Robert is not any better anyway, because do you even know who is your member of parliament? But back to the issue of, so what's the difference? This is all horrible. But my issue is this, that when we're looking at LCs, we should be look at this more seriously than what we are doing. Let's stop looking at local leaders as corridor butchermen in our societies. We have held that position, and both government and us, the individuals. Chairman, no chairman, Bambi. you feel sorry. With this position must be well represented. Government has this money. I don't want even to go into discussing. They don't. I know they have that money if they want it. If they want that money, they have it. It's just about, probably it's not their priority lately, but when it becomes priority, we are getting into another formal illegality. If you can plan for an uncertainty, that for you're anticipating the next year, maybe 30 MPs will die, 30 dying. Maybe they're the ones even killing them, because how do you plan for someone's death? That only is done by insurance.
Felix,
that is only done by insurance.
You're becoming an extremist here now.
No, I'm being serious. But we can't be here. No, it's a reality that happened. No, so yes. Automatic. I would not know why we are using
if no one dies, but at least they have the money rather than coming to Parliament.
We know Kirabo is part of the people we are probably talking about. Maybe he's making it. Yeah, he's making it personal.
You want to stay in office by force, but you're better off staying in office legally than staying in as a peeper. You will start peeping. You're peeping in your own office. Don't have this.
We've
been here before, and we are there again.
No wonder.
We could have this conversation over and over.
But it's important we look into this.
Exactly.
For me, lastly, I would
value this office.
Honestly, it is very important.
And elevate it to where it's supposed to be.
Sorry, look at the pay. It sounds like a joke. Yeah. But how do you use someone in a public office and don't pay them? Where is your moral sense as a leader? Why do you want to use people? Gotosa Surua, you minister, you MP, you whoever, and you pay the permanent secretaries. Why do you want to use and you don't pay them? They have children. This is a full-time office. That's why you go to LC and there's no one. The foreman is a carpenter, he has to double as LC. But if you pay him, where you are consent, even if it's 500,000, LC and their committee.
A huge call for facilitation, and especially when it comes to putting money, especially for their pay monthly, but also facilitating how they run their roles or services in office. That is something that can also be looked at. But this morning we also want to look at what is happening with our neighbors. We'll be looking at the dailies, looking at the Daily Nation today, some of the headlines that are there that you can look at. Highways of death, much more on that. Carnage, speeding, human error, and poor road design blamed for crashes. That is a story right there that you can also look out for in the Daily Nation. They actually show you the accident black spots when it comes to Kenya. But also Kalonzo's the man wiper MPs tell Raila. That's an interesting one right there. But also when it comes to courts, Coca-Cola ordered to put nutrient detail on its glass bottles. That's interesting right there. But also looking at the Citizen this morning, India Minister, Tanzania to lead Indo-Africa ties. That's a good one, talking about the India's External Affairs Minister and what he had to say about India seeking further strengthening for cooperation in African countries. Well, a lot in there as well. NIC's plan to adapt AI use in insurance. Top Tanzanian clergyman named Cardinal. That is also one story to look out for today. We do still have more coming. We'll be looking at the traffic updates and the weather updates later on. But for now, we will take a short break. Good morning.
This is the University of Africa. On the streets, you get your real education. Here, everybody has a degree of something. But the most important qualification is imagination. His reason is to be the GOAT. The reason to imagine is to take the beat and make it lit. So no matter what your situation, just use your imagination.
Amaina gange ndi namaganda Mariamu Monda myoga jaida emyoga ijitandika okwida nafunamu esente bampayo akakayira ak'esente bwe bampa akakayira ak'esente nayiye ekyokukola nasookera ku mutyere omutyere gwapanga beeyi n'aguvaako n'anoonya omwana twala eddaga n'amagezi n'agema esente edo n'amuwa yaje yagula supeya ow'ebyuma muno pikipiki n'obugaali buti saawa eno ndi kuyiiya okuleeta ebyuma ebimala ku bwena abakabiri bampaireyo ku esente nakoba okunoonyayo abaana babeegeresenga gano okukanika ki pikipiki era bali kujja mpolampola nga bakanika era esente bwe tunaaba tudifuna nenda kwongera mu maani mu sente bwenaaba ndifunye twongeremu ntewo bizinensi emala nenda okwebaza gavumenti egiira okutulowoozaako niife abaagansi mu kyalo okufuna esente kuba twalinga n'esente nga tulumukira mu banka bugiri buti baida ku numba ng'eno najjayo ku bwe baida ku numba baida kutaa ku bigandiiko aye dino tutwalayo mpolampola nenda okwebaza gavumenti olw'okulowooza ku nsonga eyo mukama abawa omukisa.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, looking at the traffic on the roads this morning, we will be looking at some of the roads of Chisasi, Bukoto area. We're looking at quite some clear traffic that is coming in. If you're headed into town using the Bukoto Chisasi road, that road seems to be quite clear this morning. But we do have a little bit of traffic building up along Chebando Kisaro road. That is one that you might need to be aware of if you're going to be using that route. And also much of that towards the northern bypass. It looks like there is quite some clear traffic over there. But then some of the roads leading off the bypass, you're looking at the one that connects onto Mulago, that is via Kisingiri Street. That road seems to be quite clear this morning. You can use that if you want to avoid traffic, but also much more of what you can look at over there again through that road. You're looking at Mulago Road towards the Binaisa Road. You do have traffic right there that you might need to consider. Also Binaisa Road, if you're using that route towards town, you also have a little bit of traffic indicated by those red lines over there. Kira Road as well, you're looking at quite some traffic building up over that area, maybe one that you need to be aware of so you can plan accordingly. But also as you're coming in from Mulago area and also joining in from Kira Road on the roundabout right there, you do have a bit of traffic. Also that leads into much more traffic as you head into Yusufule Road, so that one you might also want to consider. But then again, with Yusufule, it does get clear actually as you continue towards Kololo side. That looks to be quite a clear route. But continuing with Kila Road, as you join onto Makere Hill Road, you do have traffic building up, but still it's in orange line, so meaning that it's actually not that intense for now. But also some of the roads in there that you might be using, Nakasero Hill Road, that looks to have a bit of traffic. That is as you come off the road that connects to Makere Hill Road. You do have a little bit of traffic, but then again it does actually get clear as you continue between that junction that crosses over onto Lumumba Avenue. Lumumba Avenue as well, it looks to have clear traffic for this morning, and that could be easy to use as well. Continuing with Nakasero Road, you're also looking at clear traffic over there. It does also at the junction as you join onto Wandiga Road, you have a bit of traffic building up, but just a small distance and quite not intense, so that could be also all right to use this morning. But you're looking at some of the connecting roads in there as well as you head into a central town that is off Peak Street, that is the roundabout as you come from Lumumba Avenue and Nakasero Road. You do have a bit of traffic that is over there as you head towards the roundabout that is over the Peak Road. You do have a little bit of red lines over there indicating a bit of traffic. But then again, the connecting roads onto Kampala Road through the square, the City Square 1 and Road 1 and 2 roads are both having quite some clear traffic. That should be easy to get you onto Kampala Road this morning. Away from that, we'll also be tapping into your satellites to see how the weather is looking like for this morning over the country. We're still looking at mostly clear skies that is over most areas within the country, especially looking at dry weather that is persisting for the northern parts of the country. That has continued even over the last couple of days. We did see a few of the showers come through for the Lake Victoria Basin, even across parts of the nation's capital, Kampala. Looking at some of the areas around Lake Victoria, we did have a pickup in wet weather activities, but today again we're seeing a total reduction. We're going to be having mostly sunny weather for much of the southern sector. Actually, you're taking in southwestern Uganda, parts of eastern Uganda as well. Much more of those areas are expected to be having mostly sunny skies for this morning, and we might also be looking at intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions for much of eastern Uganda, and much of that is attributed to the low pressure systems that are developing over the Indian Ocean, and that extends to areas where we're actually seeing the orange colors right there over the Indian Ocean. So what this means is that now most of the moisture that would be moving towards our country and now or being diverted towards this area where we are seeing the yellow colors over there on the map. So when that happens, then we have a little bit of less rains over our area. And especially we're talking about a reduction over the northern parts of the country as well as the eastern part of the country. That's where we expect that we might still be dealing with dry conditions. But later, as some of these systems over the ocean start to die off, then we have again a pickup in rainy conditions as most of that moisture now starts to come back onto the country. At the same time, we're also seeing part of the rain-bearing clouds that are now aligned furthermore into the central part of Africa. And that is where we're seeing the red colors right there and green colors on the map. So that means that as the rain-bearing clouds are aligned towards that area, that leaves less towards parts of East Africa. If you observe even right there on the satellite, much of East Africa right now is basically dry and most of it experiencing sunny conditions. So that has contributed to the dry and sunny conditions that we're likely to experience this morning. But we do hope that by afternoon, we might see especially some of those rain-bearing clouds extending more towards our region, and we could be seeing a pickup in wet weather activities for southwestern Uganda as well as much of the areas within the western stretch. And also counting on the fact that we might have a little bit of local effects for this time of the year, especially across Lake Victoria, but also that provides especially the western part of Lake Victoria where we're also expecting just a few rains, not much intensity as well. We'll leave it at that. We will be having Good Morning Uganda agenda that will come in right after this. Later than that, we'll also be taking you through sports news, and then after that we'll also be heading for Good Morning Uganda Extra. My name is Mollen Kenyena. I want to wish you a wonderful Monday.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial star 165 star 5 star 3 hash to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
In fulfillment of the constitutional obligation, which mandates the state to make reasonable provision for the welfare and maintenance of the aged, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development is implementing the Social Assistance Programme for Empowerment, SAGE, designed to provide income security and reduce poverty among older persons. Over 300,000 older persons in 146 districts in Uganda have benefited from the grants. The income security has made life better for eligible older persons aged 80 years and above, registered with the National Identification Registration Authority, NIRA.
Adir Leila, village Madidi, Anama, Paris, Banika, Sapcounty, Apple, Ijo, Musuijo, Ambazadi, Gijo, Nile, Afudojo, Le, Afaga, Apoga, Paris, Madigale, Mandosi, Nijori, Ajidi, Mado, Matasadoja Lagat. Send the Madi Ambazadi, Mamusuabo, Nambalo, my Bama, Indri, my Ba U. Da vutiga ma udo ki mam ki baba idi muchana mbanaga ma ba ma ka jonga lakini de mande godo do ya fedi ba zidi da ire ngosi tiki tamba jolo yo na fedi ngosi ka akoma mande godo ki dindiki ube sende de bana mbi resa de se do man mo ko ki gbara sende de sima do man go tinga o fe school ga ijo bani ngoni ba sende bi wodi the third do you go to Namadi, my was attack. Go to the college, did the Chiga, do the Vekera, Padiki Vekera, side the Tidur Sutigido Nyambaro, or any send the Kodomas and go to this. My daughter says, Kisero, a guide in going to guide. Send a garment the Namas, I could just send the Garare, does send the Pony Chajokodai, send the Kochako. Mbala loga ba man siling fel kalu di to senda do pacha dosiko ai ijo ma jo wa di faru doga nduke mu jo man de jora de ni resefa ki bana wa di fa sana ki ni ache nandaru binadamu e ama ke ama za government ne za kwara ki gai wa zeki gai de ne ta dosi anda kichi amuki dosi ama ndele bana wa di fa sana ke mu jo man de jora se le dosi duki doga de ki donje mo tirki do go government do lebam ki do sijo amadigar ki vonjani ne.
This is a message from Expanding Social Protection, ESP, implementing the program under the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. ESP, better life chances for all.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning and thank you so much for being with us on UBC TV. Welcome to Good Morning Uganda Agenda. Now, this particular segment of this show, we have a guest in studios or guests in studios with whom we discuss in depth of national issues. There are always people that are following or are part of these issues that are happening. Now, this morning, we want to be looking at the trade challenges that are happening between Uganda and South Sudan. And to be more specific, about 6 weeks back, we saw trucks that were carrying maize flour to South Sudan being impounded by the South Sudanese government, claiming that they had aflatoxins. About a week ago, we saw another, that is 26 trucks, also being impounded over the same issue. Now, 6 weeks back, it was 66 trucks that were impounded. Then a week ago, we had 26 that were impounded. Now, just Saturday, last week, of course today is a Monday, we saw a team led by Mr. Audrey Kirabo, who happens to be the chairperson, Presidential Advisory Committee on Exports and Industrial Development, lead a team of traders to South Sudan to discuss the release of these trucks. And as we speak, the 26 were released immediately, and the 66 are also going to be released. Actually, these are going to be coming in bunches. Think of about 5 or something. And when they come to Uganda at the Elego side of customs, government of Uganda is going to again test them. That is the Uganda National Bureau of Standards is going to test again the cargo of these trucks to ascertain if really they did have aflatoxins, as our brothers and sisters, the South Sudanese government, affirm and confirm that these trucks did have aflatoxins that they could not allow the people of South Sudan consume. Now, joining me on set is a man who was part of this delegation that traveled to South Sudan on Saturday, and that is Dr. Julius Biaruhanga, who happens to be the Director, Policy and Business Development, Private Sector Foundation, Uganda. You're most welcome to our studios.
Thank you so much, Robert.
And welcome back.
And good morning to our dear viewers of UBC TV.
Let's begin on a lighter note. We had this issue, the traders gave a 4-day ultimatum, and it was very challenging, but you come from the Private Sector Foundation. First, help us and my viewer understand, where do you come into this picture? What is your mandate, and how are you involved into going to Southern Sudan? I don't think you own a truck or you're in this grain business.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Robert, and dear viewers. First of all, Private Sector Foundation Uganda is the apex body of the private sector in Uganda, and under the portfolio of our membership, we have 12 sectors which make up Uganda's economy. And of those 12 sectors, there are 2 sectors which were largely involved or affected by this issue that we had with South Sudan. That's the trade and commerce sector and the logistics sector. So as Private Sector Foundation Uganda, one of our mandates, our major mandate is policy advocacy to ensure that there is a conducive environment for private sector growth and competitiveness, both locally and at the regional and global levels. So as part of that, when this issue came up, that our trucks had been, and you're right, I don't own a truck, but I saw our trucks as Ugandans had been impounded over allegations of aflatoxins in our maize flour and grain. We engaged different government agencies, including the Bureau of Standards, Ministry of East African Community Affairs. We engaged Ministry of Trade. We engaged the Foreign Affairs Ministry to see how best we can quickly help our traders and our truck owners and drivers solve the issue. So basically that's how we came in as Private Sector Foundation Uganda, and just like you said, we are now have reached a level where we are having our trucks come back. Yes.
Now, our viewer, you can be part of that topic of discussion by simply using the number that is going to be coming up on your screen, but also use our Twitter handle. I'll be reading those messages that is still on your screen. Send us your message. Send us a text message on that number, a WhatsApp message. I'll be reading them out as we look at the issue of these trucks, but also other related issues regarding trade between South Sudan and Uganda. Remember, we are in the East African community, of which South Sudan is a member state, and Uganda definitely is. Now, you've talked about this group going to meet in South Sudan. Who are you meeting? Here we have the chairperson, Presidential Advisory Committee on Exports and Industrial Development, leading the delegation. What was it on the side of South Sudan?
So on the side of South Sudan, we also had their delegation was led by the chairperson, Finance Committee of Parliament. They had a delegation from the Foreign Affairs, the Bureau of Standards and Customs. Just like in Uganda, we had representatives of the private sector in the Grain Council, Private Sector Foundation Uganda. We had a representative from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which was Ambassador Tayeba Katurebe. We had a representative from our embassy in South Sudan. We also had a representative from Ministry of Trade. We had a representative also from our Uganda National Bureau of Standards. We had a representative also from the EAC Secretariat, who was the third party to witness the discussion that we had with our brothers and sisters of South Sudan. And we also had representatives from the affected community, especially the truck drivers, such that they are at par with the conversation that we are having. Yes.
It must have been really a very big delegation from Uganda meeting another big delegation. Now, the interest here is, what did you arrive at?
So, first of all, to bring this into context, our exports to South Sudan are to the tune of over 337 million US dollars. And South Sudan is one of our major major trade partners in the region. And as of that, when our trucks got impounded, of course, we have a number of trucks, thousands of them, which enter South Sudan within that period. But the 66 were impounded, like you rightly said, about 6 weeks ago. When they got impounded, we started engaging. But also a week ago, other 26 trucks got impounded over allegations of aflatoxins in our maize, flour, and grains. And as you very well know, we export a lot of food to South Sudan. So when we engaged, first off, our position as Uganda was when you impound trucks. So you have here two parties. You have the truck owners and drivers, but also you have the cargo. In most cases, the cargo does not belong to the truck owners or even drivers. These are just carriers of the product to the market. So our first position was, you need to have trucks released. Then the cargo has to be tested to ascertain whether or not they are aflatoxins as alleged. But for them to be tested, they need to be off-roaded off the trucks. Samples are picked by the Bureau of Standards. They are taken to the lab with witnesses from both South Sudan but also the EAC Secretariat, because this is a matter that involves regional trade, and we are all under the East African community, for which we have we had a representative there. So what we arrived at was that all trucks should be immediately released. That was one. So as of Saturday, before we left, 24 out of 26 trucks for the last week were released.
Okay.
So they came to Uganda Customs. They got held by now our Bureau of Standards to pick samples, be tested, and then be released either to enter with the cargo or to proceed to the market. But of course, the stand of South Sudan was that even when you find that the cargo is not, does not have aflatoxins, for us we've already ascertained
so they can't
that there are aflatoxins, so get how to manage those trucks. But of course also our position as Uganda is that we don't want bad products. That the cargo, the maize, front grains affected. When we find they're affected, they get destroyed. When we find they can be consumed at the in our market.
Yes.
So those 26 were released and held by our Customs Bureau of Standards to do the testing. The 66 trucks, they started releasing them yesterday. So they release in batches of 5 depending on the capacity to offload from our side. So the Uganda Revenue Authority, which was also present in our discussion or negotiation, which was represented by the Commissioner Customs Department, gave us a warehouse where we can put the cargo, because essentially there was no space in South Sudan where that cargo from the 66 trucks could be stored. But of course that warehouse, the keys are being managed by the South Sudan government, because they are the ones who impounded the trucks and they want to be sure that the cargo is not tampered with as the testing goes on. So they are being released. So once the trucks are released, they are offloaded, the cargo is put in our warehouse, then samples are picked, tested by the Bureau of Standards, then the truck continues to do business. So once the truck is offloaded, they continue to do business whether in South Sudan or Uganda, depending on where they where they want to go. So that was also arrived at, and it's already work in progress. Now, testing will be arranged for those 66 trucks by our Bureau of Standards, the South Sudan Bureau of Standards, and the third party, in this case the EAC Secretariat, such that we are in agreement of the results that will come out after testing by the Republic of Uganda. Then the other arrangement we arrived at was that we form a small committee that has representatives from Uganda and South Sudan, including those from government and from the private sector, to manage issues of this nature as they arise, such that there is no kind of escalation that we had. So from the Ugandan part, we formed this committee, which includes, of course, the private sector, customs, and we agreed that customs be represented by the CCD, the Commissioner Customs Department, the diplomatic community, that is Ministry of Foreign Affairs, PASED, that is the Presidential Advisory Committee on Exports and Industrial Development, then an ex-official from Standards, and that's deliberate. The reason we said Standards should be ex-official is because these are the people who are going to be doing the testing. So you're, in other words, a neutral party. So you shouldn't be part of the conversation, otherwise you're compromised. So they are ex-official, and the South Sudan government is also supposed to nominate people from the agencies they deem fit to be on that committee. And The reason is we've had over 6 weeks of our trucks impounded, and we've escalated the issue to the level of the presidency. So essentially that shouldn't be happening. So we thought to avoid that kind of impasse and having a long time standoff, because essentially businesses are making losses, because we are talking about cargo of about 14,000 metric tons, that is slightly over 10 billion shillings that is stuck. And of course, food, when you hold it for long, there are likely situations of even it getting issues.
That's what I wanted to ask you, Dr. Julius.
Yes.
That one, I was looking at clips of how these trucks are. 6 weeks carrying grain, carrying maize flour, put in hot temperatures like nothing, you know, yet they were supposed to leave and then reach, then offload, aeration and all this. I'm not an expert in this. I don't know if you're at liberty or privileged or know this information. Won't then these trucks, after 6 weeks, for example, being in such a situation, won't this, the moisture content that in case reaches some levels, automatically you detect aflatoxins, won't this necessarily mean we are going to have positive results of high levels of aflatoxins that we are fighting?
So first of all, I don't want to speculate on whether or not we are going to have positive or negative results, but just flour or grain, just like any other kind of food that you may have, there are always recommended temperatures under which it should be stored. So once it's stored in high or very low temperatures, there is a likelihood that that food is going to have some kind of issues. So one would think that that food that was under high temperatures, at least based on what we saw, because we reached the area where they were held in Nimule. There is a very big parking yard which was essentially being used for COVID, during COVID, to park trucks. There are very high temperatures, and some of the trucks were left open, just I don't know for whatever reasons. And of course, as you know, the drivers of course had it open because they were depending on that food to make what to eat, because there is no hotel in that area. There are no other facilities like water and toilets or anything. So there is a likelihood that that food could be affected by those temperatures. But again, we wait to see the results that we receive from UNBS and the analysis that they will give us as to whether or not that food has aflatoxins, and then other grading of aflatoxins when they probably entered. That's really for the very technical people who will do the testing.
Now, still, what does this mean? I see South Sudan Standards Bureau saying there are high levels of aflatoxins in this. Ugandan side saying we need to do retesting. Do we have universal standards as the East African community? That I'm just using an example, that maybe if we have aflatoxins up to 70%, these don't enter market, because for any grain there must be that element of aflatoxins, but the levels matter. That all of us, this is standard. East Africa, if grain is to enter aflatoxins, we have standardized standards. Or is it that maybe Uganda, for us, we may say 30% volume of aflatoxins, if that is language, I'm not technical in that, is what we have, and South Sudan is saying for us it is 5%. So what is, because this is where the complicity may come. If I say this is bearable for my people as Uganda's standard, maybe South Sudan says no, that is far below the belt.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very important question. Now, the aflatoxin levels for human consumption within EAC are not supposed to go beyond 10%. For animals, it's not supposed to go beyond 20%. Now, as EAC, we have a mutual recognition agreement. What essentially this means is that when UNBS certifies a product and you get the Q mark, it is supposed or it can be exported to the entire EAC market without retesting. So it's acceptable on the rest of the EAC market. Similarly, when South Sudan National Bureau of Standards does certify a product, it comes to Uganda and it's not subjected to testing as long as there is a certificate of conformity that shows this product has been tested. But of course, when there is suspicion, like just happened, testing is done. And once it's done and you say there are aflatoxins, then you're supposed to do another testing as parties which are involved, with, of course, a third party in this case, which is the EAC Secretariat, to see that, okay, based on this, we can say this food has aflatoxins or is affected in whichever manner it is. So, for instance, that's why our Bureau of Standards and the Uganda as a delegation, we insisted that we also have to do the test. Because essentially, if UNBS has certified a product, and for you, you're saying it has a problem or problems, we need to know, is it true it has problems? Because otherwise, if you don't, it's an indictment on our Bureau of Standards that the products they test have problems. So we must know that these are the problems, and we can trace back and say maybe this company or company A did not follow the set standards by UNBS, and we can easily tell that this is the company. Then UNBS does the investigations with other sister agencies of government, and then a process of making the private company accountable starts.
Now, Doctor, this also brings me, how best can you explain that the 66 trucks that were impounded were not only 66, it was a consignment of about 111 trucks. The 26 that were impounded didn't only go as 26. They were part of other trucks, about 100. But the rest were let into South Sudan. Then these particular ones were held. How best do you explain that?
So, you're right. Actually, there are hundreds of over, I think, 500. I forgot the exact number trucks.
Yes.
And the 66 were just 10%.
10%
of the total trucks that were destined to Juba, South Sudan. Of course, when South Sudan did the testing, they suspected or they ascertained that the 66 for the first batch had a problem. Later, of course, the 26, which were impounded a week ago, they also ascertained that they had a problem. So it's not that every truck that is leaving Uganda going to South Sudan has a problem. It's just a few, 10%.
Yes.
Which is essentially, in the view of it, not a big percentage. But of course, as private sector, you wouldn't want that to happen. Even the 66, we shouldn't.
Because the total of those impounded was about 10 billion Uganda shillings in terms of what they contained. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And these are small scale traders. They are not big traders like the Manderas and the Aponyes, rest in peace, who really export in big volumes. So here you find you have one trader with 2 trucks, 1 truck. So these are small traders, and normally when you get small traders affected, it's a big
they may
base.
collapse forever.
Exactly, and it's a big base of our private sector in Uganda. Over about 80% of them are micro, small, and medium enterprises. Yes.
Now, given that you have a bunch of 566 are retained, you have a bunch of about 226 are retained, there is a belief, and sometimes history has proven us right, and the happenings, that much as you're doing so much as private sector foundation, and I want to applaud you for that job well done, to ensure that you lift these SMEs to go to another level. You formalize the private sector, but it's still dominated with issues of shortcuts. Corruption tendencies. The private sector, there is so much that Ugandan traders or business people, we want shortcuts. And we also have gaps of corruption. I don't want to allege, I don't want to confirm, but still even back here home, you find that these queue marks are sometimes with drinks, because we do not have at the outlet of Uganda into South Sudan that UNBS is there testing every truck, as our brothers are doing the other side. UNBS, once they look at standards of someone, they issue the mark, they'll sometime wake up and say, let's go and inspect if someone is still abiding by the standards we gave.
Yes.
So in my opinion, no doubt this could be true, that actually these trucks have that. Because if you came to my grain mill or something and gave me the Q mark 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I could go astray. If these are human beings that if they came and I bribed my way out, I hope they don't take offense, but even if they do, this is reality. We all know it happens in Uganda. So how do we streamline with integrity? Our business community, the word integrity. These institutions, the word corruption. And for me, I think we are used to doing things here, that sluggishness, and we want to export our mediocrity or our corruption tendencies and confusion to a young nation that may be very serious with what they are doing.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's really very important. But let me start it off like this. When it comes to food handling, and in this case we are talking about grain, it starts from the garden. When you harvest, how do you dry? What chemicals do you even apply? And I'll give you this example. On our way to Guru, headed to South Sudan, Eregwa and Nimure, I saw a homestead where they were drying kasori, maize. And this gentleman was using his feet to spread the maize on where they were being dried. Now, that's where problems start. So as Ugandans, we need to know these key basic things. One, we need to make sure that our food handling is very well managed, right from when we dry it, when we are planting, harvesting, drying, and processing. But also, we must know that international markets are not to be taken for a joke, and we bring, like using your own words, mediocrity. Why? Because, for instance, a market like South Sudan, they are our major partners in trade, and it's a growing country. young but growing. For instance, just like yesterday, they did not have the capacity of testing, but now they do, and they can do the testing. So if you were exporting their poor quality grain or flour, you need to know that now they have the capacity of testing, so you need to know their rules, the kind of documentation they need, and work on our standards as the private sector. And I would agree with you partly that some of our players might either knowingly or unknowingly compromise standards. And our Bureau of Standards, again, like you rightly stated, does not have enough capacity to always visit your facility to ascertain whether or not you're still conforming to the standards, because they don't have personnel to be on every meeting facility to see are these the standards that we based on to give you the Q mark that you're still following. So as that, the responsibility is on the private sector players to make sure that they keep following those rules. That's one. Two, we are only talking about, and we are having issues within the ESC market. We are going into Africa Continental Free Trade Area. What that means is that you're going to have products from all over Africa coming to Uganda, just like the rest of the ESC market. So some of these countries, the moment they begin to suspect that your standards are compromised, they will opt for other markets. So they will say we are only importing grain and flour from, say, Kenya, Zambia, and Zambia is doing very
good.
well.
I was there in Zambia, and I looked at how serious they are. Here with dry maize just on the floor. Some, they have taplings, they have modern ways, and deep in the rural areas, how they dry theirs. Well, just reminding our viewers, you can be part of the topic of discussion. Send us a text message or WhatsApp message on that number, and I'll read one coming in here. Good morning, UBC. Thanks for the show. Uganda needs to improve its post-harvest handling of agricultural produce and check the kind of chemicals used to preserve this produce. These aflatoxins are really causing a lot of health problems, challenges among our consumers. Today, the rising cases of gut health challenges, ulcers, acidity issues, cancer, etc. So it's good that such products are banned from being consumed. Well, you didn't give me your name, but kindly give us your name and maybe where you are watching us. And please, that is the number on your screen. Use it, 0709 60 25 92. It is on your screen. Send me a WhatsApp message or a text message as we look at this challenge, and we await results from, that is National Bureau of Standards, supervised by the East African Committee and the Sudanese National Bureau of Standards. When this produce goes to the laboratory, what are they likely to find out? But of course, the Sudanese government was very clear, even when you find it doesn't contain aflatoxins, for us we did find, please don't bring those particular assignments back to South Sudan. And the government of Uganda also says, if we find there are aflatoxins, that means they're also not fit for Ugandans. I don't know if this is going to go to wherever it ends up, but, well, good morning. Thank you for the show. Still, he's talking about post-harvest, and that is Patrick watching from Juba. Oh, Patrick, thank you for watching from Juba. And of course, he's concerned that if we don't concentrate on post-harvest, if we don't look at the pesticides, the preservatives we use, we may end up the continental free zone may remain just something where we don't take anything there, because no one will be trusting our standards. Still looking at the messages that are coming in. Well, Arnold, thank you for the show. We hope this is basically an issue of aflatoxins, and there are no political games being played. We hope, he is hoping that this is specifically aflatoxins and nothing else. Then I have one very annoyed, a truck owner. He says, but I think we should rethink trade with South Sudan. Most of the times our traders have found issues there. What does your guest say about that? Let's end with that one.
Yeah, of course, in international trade, just in any market, there will be some issues. That's one. Two, South Sudan is a young country that has had a lot of problems and still having a lot of problems. You're talking about a country where you will not know who is directly in charge of what, and they are still building their systems, their governance systems, so there will always be some issues.
Of visas?
Of visas. For instance, when you go to South Sudan, they will give you what is called alien visa. If you're going there for over 3 days. Do we give any visa? In EAC in Uganda? No, you don't even get it in Kenya or Tanzania or Burundi or Rwanda. But they still give quote-unquote alien visa. So it's really a young country. So some of the issues can be avoided by us, the traders, by conforming to their rules and the rules that guide trade. But also, those that cannot be handled by us, there are other mechanisms in place to have them handled. So it's really a young country that we have to hold with care. And for that, it means we, as private sector, we have to do our part, and we let also government do their part. And of course, for this, I appreciate, first of all, the intervention of our Minister of Foreign Affairs, our Ambassador, His Excellency Badja in Juba has been very helpful. Our Minister of East African Community Affairs has been helpful. Our PASAID, but also to the level of the presidency. So our government has really been very helpful in this emphasis that we've had.
Well, yes. Doctor, I must let you go, but I'll just give you a minute to conclude. Sports is up next.
Thank you so much, UBC, for hosting me, and thank you to the viewers of this program. And we encourage the private sector to take good care of these markets that we have, and finding other markets is very okay and appreciated, but we shouldn't always have problems, go here, leave, go here, leave. We should be consistent, make sure our produce and our products are of quality, and also make sure that as Uganda, we don't give our other competitors excuses to hold our cargo, but also as a country we need to, as a government of Uganda needs to ensure that there are high-level engagements with our partners in the region to make sure that we avoid some of these non-tariff barriers, because it's not only with South Sudan but also with Kenya, Rwanda, and the rest, to make sure that trade is put at the forefront, because after all, that's primarily why we have EAC. And we need to ensure that we maintain the market but also get other markets.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Julius Byaru Hanga, who happens to be the Director of Policy and Business Development at the Private Sector Foundation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Well, Ruben is here to take you through sports updates. See you in the next hour. Good morning.
La Chole Zono Industrial is one of the presidential initiatives which is brought here in Achule land to skill our youth. The skilling is free of charge. What you really need, you have to be within the age of 18 to 35. They don't need any requirements apart from being willing. You have to be willing, and a youth who is willing to get the skills. The courses we have started with only 4. That is tailoring, hairdressing, carpentry, and welding.